Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday. And this week I am lucky enough to interview my friend B. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited. Really, really happy to have you here, B. So before we get started, Walnut, we've been in, I don't actually even know what specific containers we've been in together, but we are online friends, and we met in a couple of Viola's classes, and I believe we're in a couple of other places together too. So I'm really, really looking forward to having you on the podcast, B, to have a chat. But do you want to introduce yourself for a start, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. I am Becca Campbell, and I tend to go by simply B, just because, I love the play on that in itself, actually, because so much of my journey and my healing and everything that I've experienced in terms of growth has come from simply being. So I kind of just always remind myself of that when people in my life do actually refer to me as B, because a lot of the time it's a lot of other handles. But I am a mama to 3 little boys and living in Western Canada. And I'm also an intuitive coach and healer. And I just feel like so blessed to have had the journey that I have had, in particular in becoming a mother in the way that I did, in the sense that I have had such a beautiful catalyst for healing within my relationship, because I actually married my high school sweetheart after over a decade apart. So we have a really interesting story. And around the time that I became a wife and a mother, I also really found my awakening journey ramping up. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, to say the least, for sure. But I've always known that I was here to help people. I've always known that I was here to help people heal in a different way than modern medicine, for example, has kind of taught us in terms of like our capabilities around our ability to heal ourselves. My father was actually a physician and my mom was a nurse before she stayed home with 5 kids, and I'm the oldest. So I kind of just grew up with this really interesting perspective, hearing him speak about mainly how people were, not super interested in taking responsibility for their health and well-being, but also knowing that there was something that was preventing them from doing that. And I always knew that my purpose was going to evolve through really understanding that. Like, even as a young kid, I knew that there was like an emotional and a mental component to it that wasn't being addressed. I just kind of intuitively knew that. But at the same time, kind of seeing what his experience was like, and he loved his work, but seeing what his experience was like growing up, I never had any interest to go into medicine. People would always be like, oh, are you going to be a doctor, be a nurse? And I'd be like, no, I do not want to do that. And so I kind of like went in the complete opposite direction when it was time to go to university. My parents were paying for my university, and so they were like, do something practical. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to be. I don't know what I'm going to do in life. I'm like, I'll go do business. I'll do a business degree. And I hated it. I went through the whole thing, but like the only thing that I was really interested in was like the psychology and philosophy, my first year electives. But I was in that people pleasing mode. I really wanted to do my parents proud. And so I got through it and, whatever, but never really did too much with it professionally, quote unquote. And then after quite a few years of fumbling around and being like, what is my purpose in this world? Like, I don't know what to do. Just knowing that like it was something that was different than anything that I actually knew. I did find my way into health and wellness through personal training. And I found my way there basically because I had a lot of struggles growing up with like body image issues and eating disorders and addiction. And I had found these ways to heal myself. And I really wanted to help others who were kind of struggling with similar things that I had struggled with. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And then from there, there's just been like this full circle journey around all the aspects of self. Because that from there, working with people in that capacity, I was like, wow, these people need a lot more help than like diet and exercise. And I didn't feel like I had the capacity to do that. So I got really interested in like mindfulness and meditation, and eventually did yoga teacher training. And then of course got into like Reiki and channeling and life coaching and all of those things. So I just feel really grateful for my experience and how now I get to work with people in a truly holistic capacity where I do have the skill set to be able to help them in all of those areas, and then see that like trickle over into my parenting and my relationship and all of the other things, we experience in our day to day. So yeah, that's kind of a big nutshell, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm like, you've touched on so many things that I'm like, where do I even want to begin? Where do I want to start? But I will start with just saying that I think it's just really beautiful and lovely that we're brought together. Like we find people like how I found you, because I've got so many similarities to you, like with the university, with like my partner and all the things. Like it's just so beautiful how you can connect with people by just doing one little, like for me, one little brave thing and joining a course, and that like segued into eventually our paths crossing and stuff like that. So I think it's just, I'm just so happy to have you here. And I think it's a really beautiful, way that we cultivated our friendship. Our online friendship.
Really great. I love it.
Let's just dive into, I think I would like to hear more about your sort of spiritual awakening and a bit of like the dark night of the soul path, purely just like, asking for a friend, aka me, because I am on the brink of feeling so many feelings at the moment, like we said offline, with the world and things like that. So I think I want to start there. Let's talk about when you kind of notice like, oh, there's actually more to life than just tangible physical things.
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because I feel like there were so many things, like there were so many little things, but like I said, I really feel like things really ramped up when so basically to answer that, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit and fill you in a little bit more on my relationship, because the story is quite interesting. Like I said, we were together in high school, dated for a couple of years, had a really, really, beautiful and quite, loving relationship. My parents loved him. They were like, you could marry him. We'd be, when you're older, we'd be happy with that. La la la. All the things. And then I went to university, and it was one of those things where you just kind of like, you could feel that we were kind of growing apart and going on these different paths. And so again, split up. 12 years later, Facebook comes out. He messages me on Facebook, and I end up moving we're both from the East Coast of Canada. We grew up in Prince Edward Island, Canada. And I was living in Toronto at the time that we reconnected, and working, doing my personal training thing, and really noticing again, like all of these old patterns kind of coming up as I was working with clients. They were really reflecting back to me a lot of my shadow, a lot of like the unhealed parts of myself. And so we reconnected, and within 8 months, I basically had moved to Western Canada to live with him. And then basically as soon as I got here, of course, I had like left everything I knew behind. I was getting ready to leave again for another month to go to a yoga teacher training in Montreal. And I was really starting to notice that I was feeling very insecure. I was feeling very confused. I was starting to hear a lot of, I don't know if I would call them voices, but now I understand them as downloads from the universe, where like a lot of information was coming through, a lot of awareness was coming up around like where these triggers that were popping up with him were coming from, because they were related to our past version of our relationship and the person that I had been in that relationship, because I was suffering really badly with bulimia then, and it was a secret from him. He didn't really know about it. So I felt like coming back together with him really brought up a lot of this stuff. And then at the same time, I was starting to like really, again, receive all of this kind of intuitive information, really understanding how all of that was related as well to my childhood.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things just kind of started to bubble up. And I was hearing, and let me know if you've ever like experienced this, where I would be falling asleep at night and I was starting to like hear voices and different, like mostly voices, and a lot of them would be male voices. So it was very strange to me. I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on. But just in that like almost asleep state, I would have all of these different voices coming through, and it was like fragments of sentences. Like it didn't even really make any sense, but there was something in me that was like, this is you tapping into collective consciousness. Like this is you tapping into something that's outside of you. And it's just kind of wanting to get your attention. And once I acknowledged that, that stopped. And then my like when I'd be fully conscious, like especially when I was driving, like in the prairie, it's very, very, very flat, and it's big, 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 big sky. And the coolest thing about the prairie is the sky, because it's just like endless sky and crazy clouds and beautiful sunsets and sunrises and all of the things in the sky. But I can really look back and see where that move physically really opened up my crown chakra, and I started to like receive all of this information. So we also got pregnant like very, very shortly after I moved to be with him. It was not in the plan. Like obviously we were going to have kids eventually, but wasn't in the plan. So it was very jarring because I had just moved. I was trying to get my feet on the ground and, find work and trying to find work in my field in this small town. And I really kind of wanted to have an online business. Which I actually, brought up to my husband shortly after my first son was born. I was like, hey, I have this goal. I really want to have an online business teaching yoga. And he didn't respond very well, to say the least, because he's a very private person. And he was really scared of me being like that visible. And that was really hard on me, because I was like, am I really going to marry this person? Like it kind of came up right before we got married. And I was like, am I going to really marry this person who is not particularly supportive of what I know I am here to do? But again, there was like this download, like my soul was speaking, and they're like, nope, this is it. Like, this is your journey. Like, you guys are here to heal together. There's a reconciliation to happen, like from the past version of your relationship, and it's going to be okay. And like all of the things. And so that in itself was like probably one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, was trusting that, because it really took so much faith, and it really solidified my connection to my soul and allowing myself to be guided by that aspect of me, because I felt like in a way I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like right? Like I just didn't really feel like I had a choice. And also I had just had a baby. Our first son was like 5 months old when we got married. And so I had just had a baby, and I'm like, also I'm starting to really understand that all this stuff that I am realizing started in my childhood. If I don't heal that, I'm going to pass that on to my kids. And so it really, for me, like between my relationship and my parenting, became a non-negotiable to do my own work, and became a non-negotiable to really understand myself in a way that I could navigate what was coming up that was triggering me in my experience, because the triggers were unbelievable. Like there was just like, it was like every day, like a million things to work through. So yeah, that was really like where I would say like I went through the most intense part of my awakening. And then from there, it was like, oh, Reiki, that's interesting. I've never heard of that, but I'm going to do that. And I'm going to sign up for it, even though I've never actually even read what it's about, because I just need to know. And that blew the lid off everything, because as you know, when you realize that everything is energy and you're like operating in this completely different realm, truly, than everything that we've been taught, you're just like, inevitably there's a major awakening that happens there as your spiritual channels open up. So, my poor husband, God love him, he's like very practical, like provider, protector, grounded, like very, very, very like just so practical. And I am the complete opposite. And he really had to get used over the years. There's just been this dance of kind of getting used to each other in a way, like really accepting each other for who we are. And he, his awakening, he's awakening as well. Like he's on his own journey, of course, but just allowing him to like be his own person and really, honor the fact that it was a lot for him too. Like as much as it was very emotional to not feel that supported, in particular in the beginning, it was really hard for him to be like, okay, what's happening? Like, are you out of this world? Like, what is going on? I don't really understand any of this. So yeah, I just really like honor our journey so deeply even just saying that now, like I really honor that journey so deeply for both of us. Cause sometimes in relationships, it can be very easy to kind of be, of course, in our own little, like, oh, this is what's happening with me. And this is where I'm triggered. And this is where I'm feeling hurt and la, la, la. But meanwhile, the other person's like got their own whole like experience and conditioning, programming, perspectives. And yeah, so that was, I would definitely say the relationships and parenting were the main things that really anchored in me being like, okay, you know what? I'm going on this journey. Like whether anyone's with me or not, I just know in my soul that it's not that, we always have a choice, but if I want to be happy and I want to be, here for my family in the capacity that I really truly desire to be, then I have to do the work for myself and really honor what's going on.
That's really powerful, because it's also like at the same time you have to really maintain that like strength and grit to stick to your guns, especially being a recovering people pleaser. It would have been really easy for you, I'm sure, to just lean back into 3D life and and just be a mom and give your life to your whole family, but really standing strong and wanting to do this and wanting to start your business and stuff. So I just want to give you a little bit of praise and congratulate you on that, because I can actually really empathize and imagine how hard that would have been sometimes for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it still is.
Yeah.
It's like super hard all the time, especially when you're aware and it's different when you also have the tools, right? And when you put the support in place. Like one of the main reasons that I like eventually committed to a coach, for example, was because I'm like, I need the accountability. I need somebody in my corner that's really going to like support me and encourage me and remind me of all of the things that I am besides a mom and a wife. Because yeah, like you say, it's so easy to just fall back on that. And so easy, I find, and I think this is true for any parent, but there's something about, someone brought this up to me lately that I'd never really thought about, something about having boys because of the patriarchy where having boys, there's something there in the energy where you just feel like you're supposed to be on all the time. Like you're always supposed to be doing something for them. And my boys are amazing. They're like 5, 8, and 10. And they're very, very busy and very rambunctious and very loud. And I am very much the opposite. So just even like cultivating those tools and having that extra support and encouragement, because my husband like doesn't really get what I do and he's very busy himself. He runs 2 businesses and whatever. And, we kind of need somebody that's, not attached to us in that way. I think sometimes when we're trying to move forward in the direction of things where we're inevitably going to experience a lot of resistance. But yeah, I just really found that having that extra support made all the difference, because if I didn't have it, I would easily slip back into all those patterns. I would just be and all of the excuses and all of the like, oh, but I'm so busy and they need me and I don't have, and no one's encouraging me and la, la, la. So therefore I can't succeed. Yeah.
I heard I think I was watching a live video maybe yesterday, and she was talking about, I don't know why, because I've never clicked on this person's live before ever, like, but it just happened. And she was talking about, this is going back onto the relationship topic, but she was like, yeah, my husband and I are energetically broken up. We're still married, we still live together and stuff, but they did some kind of like emotional energetic cord cutting where they're just taking a little break from each other. And I thought that was really interesting, because there is like a spiritual body and a physical body. And I don't know why I felt like I needed to raise that, but this relationship thing has been popping up quite a lot. So it's funny that you say that that's what sort of started your I was going to say ascent, your spiritual awakening a little bit too, because it is this like twin flamey aspect to it, which I think is actually very beautiful and lovely, and good on you.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe you're saying it because maybe that's some work that I should do. Because I've done lots of energy work and kind of like separating from him, but I was actually noticing yesterday, I was like kind of tuning into our energy, and I could feel like his energy kind of like, here, like you guys can't see me, but like on me on like one side of my body. It was really, really interesting. I haven't spent the time in it to really get clear on what it was, but maybe that's why it's coming up. Maybe that's something I need to do some more work around. So
Yeah,
thanks.
well, I mean, when you're with someone for so long, and same for me as well. She was talking about this energetic break thing, and then also how now they're getting back together and starting completely clean slate and fresh. And it's like, physically, how do you actually do that, because you know someone so well? But you can imagine, like, when you've kind of up leveled in a energetic sense, how different that can actually be. And it was really interesting because I had like quite a courageous conversation the other day, and it was like, oh, I've never behaved in this way before. And it's like that clean slate thing that she was talking about. So I don't know, very interesting topic. I think I might need to like think about it and look into it a little bit more.
I love that. I think that's so interesting because I also had a very courageous conversation in the last couple of days. And that concept of a clean slate was really in my awareness. I wasn't really completely sure like how, again, like you're saying, like how do you do that exactly? But like there's been a lot of times in our relationship where we've been through something, we tend to kind of not really, we're avoiders of conflict. Like we don't really fight. We kind of just like avoid talking about things because we actually had, and I was shown too by my guides that like part of the reason we are our tendency to avoid it runs so deep is because of the pain of our breakup. Because we don't like to like when we were teenagers, there's that aspect of ourselves. It's like, I don't want to go there again. So yeah, that's really interesting. But I love that. I love that idea of like, just every time you go through a little up level, there's just like a little reset. My odometer turned over at like 100 yesterday, some 100 yesterday too. And I'm like, oh, reset time. Anytime I see the zeros. That totally makes sense. Feels very aligned. Very aligned.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I raised it then. So, B, I'm wondering if there's a walnut listening who's like, okay, I really have a little bit of shadow work coming up. I have a lot of imposter syndrome. I feel like a butthole quite a lot of the time. And I know that I need to start healing some past things about myself, or I really want to stop feeling guilt and shame and things like that. Where would you say, or that you've suggested to your clients or things like that, to start the actual process of doing the thing and coming into awareness and the healing journey, basically?
I feel like it really begins with, for me anyway, being able to be really just so deeply present in my body. Because, of course, like any of those emotions that you mentioned, guilt, shame, any of the fear, just like feeling like crap on a cracker about yourself, like it's all residual of something that's going on in our subconscious, right? And so in such large part, it's like our subconscious is like the iceberg, the below the surface, which I kind of like to think is like our head is above the surface. We're kind of aware of everything that we're thinking, that like 5 or 10% or whatever the iceberg that's ahead above the surface, like we can kind of really tune into that pretty easily. It can be hard to like slow those thoughts down and get clear in our mind. But I find if I can like drop really deeply into my body and just really feel where the discomfort is in my body. This was actually how I healed myself from my eating disorder. I didn't have any professional help. When I told my parents, they kind of like poo-pooed it because they just kind of thought I was looking for attention based on some of my other behaviors at the time. And I actually also told my boyfriend at the time, who was my now husband, and he also kind of like poo-pooed it. So I've had a lot of abandonment stuff around just even that in my life. And that's been that was the main teacher for me, because there was something that clicked one day when I was like, okay, I can't go on like this any longer. I have to do something. And there was a little voice that kind of came into my head, and it's like, you need to learn how to be in the discomfort in your body, because once we can sit with that in like so much love and compassion for ourselves as well, because that's kind of the second piece, like to be there and be like, okay, remember, this is just energy, right? Like everything is energy. And so whatever we're feeling, whatever emotions, of course, being energy and motion, that are coming up for us, it's all here to teach teach us something and offer us this opportunity to heal. But we have to take the responsibility of really being present with it, because I really do feel like presence is like the best medicine. It's like the almost can feel so elusive at times, because there can be so much going on in our minds and so much going on in our lives in the world, that it can be really hard to not be stuck in the past or projecting into the future. But physically, like being really present in your physical body and being able to be with the sensation and breathe into it, like as simple as like breathing light, connecting to your source energy above, bringing that through your body and all the way down into the ground, and being really grounded and connected. I like to think about like us having the ability to really be able to recycle that energy through our breath, just like a plant would, right? Like just like a tree or a plant would like shed its leaves when it's done that cycle of growth. And that energy we can also like learn how to transform into fuel for whatever it is we want to create if we desire as well. But yeah, I would say like it's really like that compassionate presence, compassionate curiosity, like what's really going on here, like what part of me, usually related to inner child, right? There's usually an inner child piece there, and most of us kind of like, again, don't really want to go there either, because a lot of that's painful, and we've been so conditioned to to squash our emotions and believe that we are somehow flawed if we're having these bad thoughts, quote unquote, bad thoughts and feelings, these heavier thoughts and feelings. But truly, there is no good or bad, right? There is what there is. We're here. We're human. We're here for the duality and the full spectrum of all of the emotions that we get to experience. But yeah, I feel for people, knowing like how long it kind of took me to get to a point where this is like my default now. Like I can run a couple of days like feeling pretty crap, but like I still, even in that, know that there's a lesson. I know that there's a shift happening. And so I'll just like make a practice of sitting with the funk and letting it be, instead of trying to like push it away or judge it. I mean, inevitably we're going to judge, because that's human also. But yeah, just kind of like really starting to recognize that whatever is present isn't who we really are. Right. I remember like Eckhart Tolle, that would have been another one of like my pinnacle moments, was like listening to Eckhart Tolle, like A New Earth, where he talked about the fact that we have an ego and that we don't actually, that like all of those mean girl voices or mean person voices in our head, those aren't actually us. They're just like their ego. They're something that we've learned throughout our lifetime somewhere along the line, that apparently that's who we are, but that's not true. And I remember there was such a significant shift for me in realizing that I felt completely out of body for like 2 weeks. I was just like, I'm so free. I'm not that's not me. Oh my God, I get it. I have a choice, right? I have a choice whether or not to sit in that. I have a choice whether or not I'm going to hold on to those beliefs. And it wasn't like they vanished in a second, because that would be nice, but it's not how it works. But yeah. Sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I love that a lot. I'm a big fan of sitting in my filth for a time, but it's not like, sometimes you do need to just sit there and feel apathy and feel really like a butthole and let those thoughts come up. But I think the key is like walking, or sometimes you're not walking, you're sitting and crying, but being beside those feelings with the other part of those as well, right? Like you can't have rain without a rainbow and all those kinds of things. So I think that's a really powerful modality, is just to be intentional with it. So when I'm not feeling great, I will allow myself to be like, okay, let's let this happen, rather than trying to say I'm fine when I'm really not, and being really honest with myself. And to be honest, it's really proven. It's scary at first, where I've had to sort of say to people, no, I don't want to do this because I don't feel good, and it's nothing you've done or anyone's done. I just don't feel like it. And you spiral in your head, right, of like, oh, they're going to be mad at me, or I feel like I'm letting people down and all the things. But I've been really pleasantly surprised every single time I have been honest with an external person. So that's made me feel stronger with being honest with myself and feeling like a butthole when I feel like a butthole,
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing. So thank you for sharing that.
sure. And I also think, like, you talk about kind of like being able to there's this piece of being able to walk in duality as well, right? So yeah, okay, we feel like absolute crap, but then when this, we can still feel like crap, and still have the awareness that, again, this is like, it may not feel like a gift at the time, but it's offering us an opportunity. But also remembering, and this was a huge piece for me, like on the spiritual path as well, like how connected we are and how much support there is, and how we've got these angels, these guides, the spiritual support team that's there like anytime that we want to call on them. So I find too, like, we can really sit in the darkness, but we can also invite the light into that darkness to help us transform and transmute that, or just even like be brave enough to be with it. So I would never like underestimate the power in just asking for your help, like whether it's people like in like physical form, or whether it's like you just need to like riff with and unload on for a little bit, have someone hold space for you. But like there's so much spiritual support there too, that I feel like we're really being encouraged to tap into as a humanity right now, with everything that's happening, where it's like, okay, we can't control what's going on in the world at all, really, but we can fully control what's going on within ourselves, and we can access higher powers that we are literally designed to embody in this experience. And that's, again, I feel like that's such a big part of the purpose of why we are here, right? Is to understand that. And that's how we're shifting the frequency of the planet, is by sitting with our shit so that it can just like move, and also allowing the light in, allowing the love in, allowing like the divine that we are created in and here to create through into our experience that much more. And it also helps to like dissolve like dissolve the darkness, right? So
yeah, and let it bubble up and out.
yeah.
But
I have visualizations with that, with boys in my life.
yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
that was that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before I kind of like ask you my like token question that I ask all guests and stuff, I'm just curious, B, if you've got do you have an example of when you've like been a walnut and had a moment where you've had to be brave recently? I know you mentioned you had a courageous conversation, but have you had a time that you've had to really feel a little bit scared and excited, and what happened?
I would say that the majority of well, it's kind of hard to say. Like, yes, I already kind of talked about like having those courageous conversations with people in their lives. And I do feel like that is like such a huge piece, because it can be so easy to not want to hurt other people's feelings. But I would say more so it's been like doing the things that my soul is calling me to do, even though I don't necessarily feel, or haven't in the past felt like I was going to get approval or recognition from the people that were close to me, that I was really like searching for it from, if that makes sense. Like the people that are closest to us, they can love us like no matter what, but they're not always going to understand us. And I really feel like it takes a lot of courage to be able to just do you anyway, especially when there's a lot of conditioning around, like, for example, I'll just use the example of marriage, right? Where there's like, again, like the patriarchy kind of suggesting, I use the word suggesting loosely, but that as a wife, and I don't want to like exclude anyone in my example, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, that we're supposed to like kind of be we're supposed to do for everybody else and make sure everybody else is comfortable with what we do, and get approval from the husband. For, again, this sounds so old school, right? But that conditioning is still there. Like that program is still running collectively, and certainly has been something that I've really had to take a look at over and over again in my own relationship. But yeah, just like trusting yourself and knowing that the people around you are going to benefit no matter what from what you do, if you're following your heart and soul, right? Because it's always going to be for the highest good, but it doesn't feel easy. It feels really, really scary. And that has been also where that practice of like just really sitting with that, the discomfort of that fear, and detaching energetically and emotionally and mentally and in all the ways from the judgments, because certainly my husband has not loved everything that I've done. He doesn't love to like not understand. It leaves them feeling very left out and disconnected, right? And being able to just still do my thing anyway, but also hold that awareness and compassion and recognition for myself and what I'm actually here to create and all the people I'm here to support, including my family. But like following your truth, no matter what anybody else's opinion of it is.
I love that. My question that I always ask is, what does being a walnut mean to you? But I think you've really just hit the nail on the head with that, where being a walnut means like to just do you and, you know, not worry about the external judgments and follow your heart and all those sorts of things.
All those beautiful cheesy things that we like to say, but are so true.
Yeah, but they're so corny and cheesy, but they're actually so delicious and beautiful. And I don't know where the negative connotations even started from, because they are so beautiful.
Probably because like people, you know, we kind of like make fun of it because it's uncomfortable in a way, right? We tend to kind of poke fun at things that are uncomfortable. And I think people are very, not, I don't want to say people like generalizing, but as a humanity, we just haven't been taught this stuff. And we know that we're unlearning a lot. And there's a lot of work to do in terms of just really allowing ourselves to be fully authentically expressed in whatever capacity that is for us as individuals. And I believe that is the medicine that we're here to bring to the world. Like I really, really, really do. And so that's why I love the work that I do so much, because I just like, I'm so lit up by people just being like, hey, you know what? Like, you're right. You know, just being able to activate that within them where they're like, yeah, no, I can do hard things, and I'm here to do the hard things. And the hard things don't have to feel so heavy all the time. They get to feel, like you said, exciting. I know you always use the word scare-sighted. I love that. Like, that's it, right? That's exactly it. We get to do the things that make us feel scare-sighted. And that's kind of how I roll now.
I love that.
Trying to teach it to my kids. They're kind of like, what are you talking about? But that's okay. They'll get it eventually.
I can like, I don't know, Walnut, if you're not watching the video, I'm like smiling so big because I can just feel how passionate you are about your work, like through the screen. Like I just feel like you're like glowing with like this really like happiness, and it's making me feel really nice. Where can if there's Walnut listening who is like, oh my god, I love this woman, I need to be up in her grill and watch her really amazing delicious reels all day long, where can the Walnuts find you?
Yeah, so the place I hang out most on socials these days is definitely Instagram. So you can find me on there at The Whole Vibe with B. It sounds complicated when I say it out loud, but that's where I am. And also The Whole Vibe podcast is where I'm focusing a lot of my energy these days as well. I'm really excited to air your episode, Les. Next.
I'm really excited too.
We had such a beautiful conversation there as well. But yeah, those are my two main places that I'm pretty focused on right now. I'm trying to call back some of my energy from some of the spaces that I've been giving a lot of it away. So yeah, Instagram and the podcast are definitely the best places to hang out. And yeah, I can also give you my website as well. We can drop that in the show notes, and people want to check out what I have up for offerings these days. But yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Yes, and we will put those in the show notes for you, Walnut. Thank you for listening to this episode, Walnut. I, as always, really appreciate your time and you being here and you giving away your precious space to listen to my voice and these wonderful people that like B that I have on here. And B, thank you very much for visiting us and for all that you do in the world. I so appreciate you so much. Is there anything else you feel on your heart that you haven't shared, or that you feel someone needs to hear at the moment?
I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations. I feel like they're extremely activating, in the sense that, like, I know every time I have one, there's just something that's unlocked within me. And I'd really just encourage anyone listening to really honor those moments, really slow down enough to really notice those moments where maybe you're feeling, maybe it could be anywhere on the spectrum, right? Maybe you're feeling really bummed, or maybe you're feeling really inspired, but just know that whatever the moment is presenting to you, when you're present with it, it's such a gift, because it's showing you something where you're ready to either shift and let go, or it's showing you something, again, there's the whole spectrum there, but we're just kind of talking about the funk and then the fabulous, for lack of a better description. And then when the things you get really excited about, like, follow that. Like, if something comes into your awareness where you're like, hey, that's really landing, I'd really like to try that thing, or I'd really like to explore that quote unquote like healing modality, or that new hobby, or whatever it is, follow what feels good. Like, we can get so bogged down in what doesn't feel good and kind of just stew in that without really allowing ourselves. And again, I really feel this has to do with like so much around worthiness and just feeling like we're enough in our experience, but like to allow ourselves to really lean into what is calling us and what's lighting us up, because we're here to raise the frequency of humanity in the planet. Like, I really feel like one of the most important things we can do is, yes, like honor the heavy, like process that stuff, do the healing work, get the support in doing that. The ripple effect will be like beyond anything that you can possibly imagine. But so too will the ripple effect of you just being in your joy. And whether that's like having a dance party in your living room, or just like taking a few minutes to play with your kids and really get down on their level and recognize what they're trying to teach us in terms of like seeing the world through fresh eyes all the time, and like seeing the potential and the fun and the joy and everything. There's just so much available to us that is really going to help us shift individually and collectively. And I just feel like that's so important right now, to just remember in our day to day, not to put extra pressure or responsibility on anyone, but just to give yourself the permission to create some more space to allow in what it is you're really truly here to experience. So yeah, that'd be about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Walnut, if you enjoyed this episode, please tag us both on Instagram. We definitely want to hear from you and hear about how you're taking up space and how you're honoring yourself, for sure. And again, Bea, thank you so much for your time and for visiting us and all your wonderful wisdom. I so appreciate you and I love you.
Thank you so much. I love you too. So happy to be here.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.